Okay, YouTube's getting ready. All right, we're up on YouTube. And then let's start the webinar. Okay, we're live, but we got about 3 minutes before it's time. So did you want to do any owl calls, Milan, or should we have Joe do owl calls? You can do owl calls.
I did it the last time. I think it's your turn now.
I think Joe's video is having issues. Joe, do you want to do any owl calls? No, you don't want to do any owl calls, Joe? You're on mute right now. I think Joe's video is running slow. I can do some owl calls. So, of course, the easiest one, the barred owl that's sitting over Joe's shoulder, is the one that does the who cooks for you all. So it sounds like, oh, 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 oh.
Yeah, my internet is not great up here.
And so that's more the male has a shorter awl on the end. The female has a longer and she has a higher pitch. So she's more, oh, 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 oh. Whereas the male is lower with a shorter awl. Oh, 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 oh. So that's how you can tell them apart if you hear them both. And then great horned owls are more mellow hooting. Oh, 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 for a male, and female is more notes, higher pitch. Oh, 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 oh. But then there's individual variations, so you can get males that have kind of a vibrato. Oh, 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 oh. We had one female, a wild one in the area that had an upslur. Ooh, 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 ooh. She was super easy to identify. Yeah, and Ruby, our great horned owl that works at the Owl Center, her hoot is more up and down. Ooh, 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 ooh. So each one is an individual, and if you get to know the owls in your area, you can actually identify them as individuals by voice, which is really cool because then you can tell if there's a new one in the area, if there's been mate replacement or those kinds of things. If you found a dead owl and you know you have a nesting pair nearby the next year, then you can say, okay, are those the same birds? Are they different birds? So being able to identify them individually is really cool. We had a barred owl on the bluff just above Houston. The female did a normal hoot, and the male, instead of saying who cooks for you all, would say who cooks for you, who cooks all. Every time. He always left out the for you. So individuals are pretty cool. And Andy isn't live here, but if Andy was live, she can do a perfect Screech Owl imitation, which she learned from our Eastern Screech Owl. He gave her lots of practice. But it is 11 o'clock, so I think we'll get going with the program because we're going to keep this to 1 hour. So those of you who have tuned in before to our Virtual Owl Expert Speaker Series, you're used to luxury where we have about an hour-long presentation and then another hour for questions. Because we're having multiple presenters today, we're keeping everything squished into 1 hour. So Milan will be talking for maybe about 45 minutes, and then we'll take questions at the end of that. And then we'll end the session. This will be saved to our YouTube channel, so you can watch it later and have your friends watch. So please do that. The Zoom chat, as usual, we're going to have disabled, but you can type your questions into the Q&A. And because we're having a short Q&A session, we will only be taking questions from Zoom Q&A. Those of you who are watching on YouTube, please keep the YouTube chat on topic, but we're not going to be taking questions from YouTube this time because we have limited time for questions. And a big thank you to everybody that donated to help make this possible. Some of you are viewers watching with us, and we also have some major sponsors that helped sponsor all of our programming today. So that's Ultra Federal Credit Union, Bremer Bank, Fastenal, the Houston Dental Clinic, the Houston Lions Club, My Energy, and I Am Love Energy Healing. And just a little very brief background on Milan, because it could be much longer, but we want to hear him talk. He's the executive director of the Bird Protection and Study Society of Serbia. He's been doing nature research and conservation work since 2001, and he's been studying those magnificent long-eared owl roosts over there since 2004. And there is a poster behind Milan that kind of inspired our shirt this year for International Owl Awareness Day. I love that design, and I remembered it from several years ago, and I thought, wouldn't that make a fantastic t-shirt? So we contacted Milan and said, hey, where did you get this done? He put us in touch with the artist, and they reworked it into a t-shirt design. Joe, do you have the t-shirt there so you can hold it up? Some of you have already purchased this. You can buy this either in person at the International Owl Center or online, if our web shop isn't being too much of a pain in the butt, which it has been for a few people. The back of the shirt lists from big to small all the owls of Serbia in Serbian, and then also their scientific names. So it's an excellent learning experience for all of you. And half of the proceeds from these shirts, half of the profits, are going to go to Milan and his organization for their work studying owls over there. So super good cause and a really awesome t-shirt. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Milan.
Okay. Thanks, Carla. This was a short but really productive intro. Thanks for nice words, and thanks for another opportunity to talk to you guys. Well, I'm sitting here thousands of miles away from you, but I feel kind of being part of the team, which is good. You know, the owl people are really special. We connect easily around the globe, and we get friends wherever we go to. So the last time I was speaking about long-eared owls of Serbia and what we have done in the last decade and so, and how we did some research and conservation work, and especially what we have done with public and schools and media and kids and everything. And when we were speaking about this presentation today, Carla said she would love to hear something else. And we came up to an idea to talk about all owl species that actually live in Serbia. So this would be about them today. So all the species will be mentioned. So I'll go and share the screen. Okay. So the screen is there. All okay? Good. Okay. So you heard my name, and you heard that I come from Bird Protection and Study Society of Serbia. That's an organization which was set up in 1989 right here in Novi Sad, which is the capital of the northern province of Vojvodina here in Serbia. And today we run our organization from the headquarters office here in Novi Sad, and also we have, of course, another office in the capital, Belgrade. We are a team of less than 20 people, but I think we're doing a really remarkable job researching and conserving not only the birds and owls, but also the countryside and the wildlife, and we're doing our best to also to share our knowledge with thousands of people, and also to inspire them to do something similar. And for myself personally, birds, especially owls, are something that actually occupies me a lot. And since my very early childhood, I've been connected with nature, and owls always had a special place amongst all different creatures there. And first I got in really close contact with owls when I was at my university, and then I instantly fall in love with one of the birds that was actually a Ural owl, which was found in my hometown. It was injured, and people called me on my birthday, and it was, for me, that was a sign from heavens, you know, a big owl, really cool thing of my birthday, and I did my best to rehabilitate this animal, but it simply couldn't make it. We never actually found out what happened. Maybe it was just malnutrition, and maybe it was even poisoned. But it was 20 years ago, and we didn't have good procedures. We didn't have a team that could actually cope with this, and I was really sad at the end. And then I told myself, I have to do something more for owls. And then things went on and on. Of course, then how it goes on. You meet new people. You find out that you actually share the same passion and same love for owls and for nature, and then you start taking some actions all together. So for those of you who haven't been to Serbia, or you don't really have a clue where the country is situated, this is kind of a world map with a country's position on it. Serbia is based in, I would say, southeastern Europe on Balkan Peninsula, right in the middle of Europe, and it's the landlocked country, so we don't have any seaside, and the area of the countries. Now we have all the details in kilometers square and square and miles square, of course, because you guys are using in the States, you're using different figures. And so it's about 88,000 square kilometers. Population is somewhat less than 7 million people. The capital is Belgrade, which is 1.4 million people. We still argue about the size of the capital, whether it's 1.4 or even 2 million. And so the northern part of the country is really flat. It's a typical flat steppe area with agricultural lands, usually up to 50, 60 meters above sea level. But the average height of the relief in Serbia is about 473. And further you go south, you hit into the rolling hills and small mountains, and then you go further south and you hit into the tall mountains. So the highest point of the country is somewhat above 2,650 meters, and the lowest point is only 28 meters. It's at the east of the country, just next to Danube. So the generally climate of the country is moderate continental climate, but further you go south, you get more warmth coming from Mediterranean Sea and from Black Sea, and but the climate has been changing a lot recently, and so we are now witnessing really dry summer months and less snow we get in winter, which is actually causing loads of damage to agriculture. It's actually, some parts of Europe are really badly hit with wildfires recently, especially now in July and August. And so definitely climate is changing, and we're witnessing actually climate change by our own eyes. And when we speak about land use of the country, this really dark green, if you can see it, are actually conifer forests, which are mostly distributed at the southwest of the country and at the south of the country. The normal green, I would say, color resembles mostly deciduous forest. The gray, the yellowish areas are agricultural lands and lowlands actually, and red, of course, are the villages and towns and cities along across the country. And so the total forest cover is something around 1/3 of the country, and this is quite important too, because most of the owl species are somehow connected with, at least in Serbia, connected with woodland habitats. And then you have these three pictures on the right hand side. The top one is right close here to Novi Sad. It's the flooded forest and flooded meadows and pastures along the Danube. Then the middle picture resembles Shomadia region, which is the middle of the country with little patches of woodland and patches of arable land and so-called strip farming. And it's really mosaic of habitats, and it's really good for many species of wildlife. Not really intensively done agriculture, not too much pesticides, not, it's quite nice. And then further south, you hit into the mountains. This is an area of Uvac Gorge. That's the area where we have biggest population of griffon vultures in Serbia, about 250 breeding pairs, and you get some really good species up there, like the brown bear and gray wolf and golden eagles and many, many other species up in the mountains. And of course, on the down left side, that's the Serbian national flag. And so our presentation today is about Owls of Serbia. This is, for me, this is the best owl poster ever made. It's been done by a couple from Poland, Michal and Skakia, and Kasia Skakwi. And this poster was done for us back in 2014. And since then, we've printed out thousands of copies. And so many kids and schools and families have got this poster, and people start to get interested in owls. And you can see on the upper row, those are the adult birds, adult individuals of these 10 species, and on the lower row you get, of course, juveniles. So in Serbia we have 10 owl species recorded, and all 10 of them are breeding at present. Okay, so we'll go now from a species to a species, and I'll be telling you about their ecology and what we have done for their conservation sake, etc., etc. Of course, the first one is the barn owl. Our barn owl population is mostly consisted of dark individuals. That's the Tito albigutata race, or the subspecies. It's different than the one you find in Mediterranean zone of Northern Africa and Europe and Middle East. So these birds are darker and they're different, like they're much different than the ones you find in UK, for example. You see the population size is something between 3,500 up to 5,100 breeding pairs, and we witness a small decrease in population of these species. So the barn owl is mostly found in different agricultural lands, mostly in lowlands, around and in human settlements. Of course, you know that they're really connected with humans, with us, with our buildings, with our farms, with whatever we do. Actually, barn owl has been following humans in this part, at least in this part of Europe. And all these pictures, of course, are made in Serbia. The barn owls we usually find in derelict buildings, in old farms, up in church roofs and buildings like this. And most of the times they will be having hard times to find a good enough place where they can actually lay eggs and produce youngs. And this is why we were making different nest boxes for them. For example, this nest box on the picture was erected up in one of the farms back in I think it was 2009. We placed around 30 nest boxes for them, especially in South Banat region, and most of them were taken straight away. The barn owls are really desperate to find good places. This barn owl design, barn owl nest box design, is actually taken from the Barn Owl Trust, and it's our friends from UK that have tried a lot of different designs, and it proved out that this one is amongst the best. On the far left side, you see a female barn owl sitting on a clutch, and then that's me with one of the nest boxes. And on the far right side, you see one of the barn owls up in the attic, and a typical building where you can find them during the daytime, for example. The barn owls are facing strong pressure from different pesticides, and we find them from time to time poisoned, but more frequently we find them as road casualties along major roads, and especially along the motorways in Serbia, because, you know, just like anywhere in the world, these lovely creatures, they don't know how to cope with really fast cars and different traffic, and they die a lot because of the traffic. So the conservation measures that we have done are mostly, talking to farmers, trying to persuade them not to use too much pesticides. We've been ringing them, following some populations, and of course erecting up nest boxes. And of course, that's my hobby, and many of my friends do it. We've been pelleting a lot. We've been collecting pellets from different regions, and we even published some of the papers about the diet. And sometimes you do find up to, I would say, 15, 16, 17 mammal species in their pellets, and you even find some of course, some birds and even some frogs, and it's quite interesting. The next species that live in Serbia is the Eurasian pygmy owl. It's one of the smallest owl species in the world, with a really tiny isolated population of 50 to 75 breeding pairs, and they live only in southwestern part of the country, up in a upland conifer forest above, I would say 1,000 meters above sea level, really high. And this is kind of boreal habitat that it's been preserved there since the last glaciation period. The first individual was found, I would say, quite recently, a couple of decades ago. And then since then, due to more intensive fieldwork, we keep finding new territories, but only in this tiny southwestern part of the country. So far, we believe that the population is stable and that there are no huge severe threat to the population, although in some of the sites, development has been noticed, and especially skiing tourism has been pushed up in the mountain, and this could actually lead to local population decrease or something. But at the moment, I think they're doing okay. We didn't take any special conservation measures yet. We may be putting up some of the nest boxes in the future, but this small owl species is not having a trouble to find breeding hollows, because these forests are full of black woodpecker and other species, so they can easily find breeding sites. In Serbia, they feed upon small mammals and small birds, and it's quite funny when you go up in the forest and you want to check if there are any Eurasian pygmy owls around. You just play a call of the Eurasian pygmy owl, and if you get instantly attacked by hundreds of those small species, small birds like coal tits and great tits and other species, you know that some of these mean, nasty guys have been around. I mean, they're small, but they go for a prey that could be even bigger than them, some thrush species, for example. The next species is a little owl. It's really widespread, quite numerous in some areas, a beautiful an owl which lives in lowlands and hillsides, even in some of the upper areas of the mountains. And it's also, like the barn owl, connected with human activities. And they follow humans because of the food, of course, because they follow agricultural land, like arable land and meadows and pastures and orchards. And of course, they follow humans because they find good enough places to breed. The same is true for little owl, as we said for the barn owl. Many times they're having trouble to find secure, good places to nest. And this is why we also use some of the nest boxes that we place in different regions. There was a story back in 2011. I took one of the nest boxes. It was beginning of April, and we went to one of the sites just to erect a nest box so a TV crew could film me, because this TV show was about owl conservation. So we placed this nest box. It was something like Monday, and we were just talking about this for the TV crew. And then I came back on Friday, and there was a little owl sitting up inside this nest box, and it already had one egg. So it took only 4.5 days for a little owl to pop in and take the. I was really shocked, because I didn't expect that it would take it so quickly. And then it really gave us an insight that these guys are needing our help. So we placed dozens of different nest boxes around, but we use a special design with different barriers, wooden barriers inside, which go zigzag, because our villages and towns are full of martins. It's the pine martin or beech martin, and these weasel-like things are hunting all different prey. And of course, the little owls, if they can easily go inside the nest box, then they could easily kill the whole couple, or just a female sitting on eggs or chicks. So this is why we use this zigzag thing, and that could be preventing, for example, a stone marten to go inside and do the damage. This has been done also in Belgium, in Netherlands, in many other countries. along in Europe. And we also did some of the pelleting, some of the diet research, but it's not that easy because they break too many bones, and so the leftovers of their diet are not really good and easy to be studied. The next species is a Boreal owl. You guys are having Boreal owl also in the States. Boreal owl is living up in the Balkans, but just similar to the northern Eurasian pygmy owl, living only on really isolated mountain caps with really good quality conifer or mixed forest in a sort of alpine habitats, which are really cold and etc. etc. And this is due to the Balkans being close to the Mediterranean and being in a hot climate. So this is why they have to be pushed up in the mountains so they can actually survive the hot weather, hot months, summer months. And their population is only between 250 and 350 pairs. It's the same is true for the Boreal owl, just like for the pygmy owl. That the species was present in Serbia maybe since ever, but the first records are actually coming just right after the Second World War, and then rediscovered in 1980s, and then new research periods happened somewhere after 2010. And now we are getting more and more data, and now more people going up into mountains, collecting data, even taking pictures, etc. So this is helping us now to understand ecology of the species, their needs, and to take some measures to help the species. The species has been threatened by legal, but sometimes even illegal logging up in the mountains, and also the forestry practice is not really fond of having dead old trees and trees with many tree hollows, which these guys are using. So some of the foresters, they go inside the forest and they cut these trees with nesting hollows in order to prevent pests to go inside the forest. But this is not good, of course, for the generally for the biodiversity. So we have long discussions with them to try to persuade that they should be actually taking into consideration other things, not only woods and cubic meters of wood or whatever. You see pictures on the left-hand side from 2010 and 2011. We have a friend. His name is Brano Rudic. Hello, Brano. I think he will be watching this later on. And he's a teacher in one of the primary schools. And so he's actually teaching not biology, but he's teaching technical sciences to kids. But he gives a lot of talks about wildlife and nature. And so kids are really inspired to go and make some of the nest boxes. So he gave them a school assignment to make Ural owl and Boreal owl nest boxes, and so we took over 40 of them from the town up in the mountains, and we erected them along Jadovnik mountain, which is in southwestern Serbia. And it took ages until some of them were taken by Boreal owls and Ural owls, but it was a good thing to start. And so we were using different designs that we actually read and found from our colleagues from Northern Europe, like from Scandinavia and other countries. And yeah, this is one of our friends climbing up in the tree in the middle picture, and on the right hand side is one of the adult Boreal owls. And you can see also a really old Italian 4x4 vehicle that our friend Becca was using by the time. The next species is a really cute Screech Owl. Carla loves having people doing different calls. Screech Owls is really simple, so I'm going to do only on the Screech Owl call at the moment. So they basically do. And the difference between male and female is that female call is somewhat high pitched than the male call. And these guys are the only true migrating owl species in Serbia and in Europe. They leave our country in late summer, and they come back sometimes in mid-March or late March. And they're also cavity breeders. They're looking for different trees with cavities and that are natural or made by woodpeckers or other species. and they readily come into our villages and towns, into different parks and alleys. And we found out that they also have trouble to find places to nest, because there are numerous other species which breed a lot around their settlements that are more aggressive, like the jackdaw or starling or other species, and they may be even taking out Scops owl from the nesting cavities. So we have on several occasions, together with our members and our friends, different nest box schemes. For example, there's one nest box scheme in Čačak, which is my hometown. I'm sending greetings to Zoran and Gasho. They made over 40 nest boxes for Scops owls, and they placed them up, along different green areas in the town, and most of them were straight away taken by Scops owls. And this is really good, because then you can actually do some monitoring, and you can start actually doing ecology of the species. Then I know that there's another monitoring program in nearby town of Kraljevo and in several other sites in Serbia. So I think up to 100 nest boxes are placed only for these species in the country, and plus they're using also other nest boxes that are placed for growlers and maybe little owls and others. And their population is quite large, and we believe that it's stable. The Scops owl may be suffering from lack of food, because their main prey are different crickets and bush crickets and different insects. And due to heavy agriculture and spraying, they may be left out of food. The other problem is that species is migratory. They have to fly from the Balkans over some of the really dangerous islands in the Mediterranean zone, like Cyprus and Malta and other places, where they get heavily shot and caught in different mist nets and lime sticks, and even eaten up there. And they also get heavily shot in Northern Africa and Middle East. So the story of a normal Scops owl is not that fun. We've ringed some of the birds in Serbia. We also have a couple of records of Scops owls coming from different countries, and birds ringed in Serbia also going to different countries. But this data set is not that big. And these lovely guys are, as I said, using our nest boxes readily. They live in mostly in lowlands around human settlements, but also in sparse woodlands up in the mountains, where if you go to the mountains there, density is really tiny compared to what you find down in lowlands. And of course, my favorite owl species is the long-eared owl. Me and my friends we spent so much time studying it, but not only studying, but having fun working with this species and learning from the species. And we made so many good friends around the globe because of this. The population of long-eared owl in Serbia is quite large. It's between 19 and 28,000 breeding pairs. And we believe that we even witnessed a small increase because of recent change in land use in the country. The long-eared owl is living from those 28 meters above sea level, from the lowest point up to even 1,500 meters up in the mountains. So they use different types of habitat around agricultural areas where they find woodlands and little groves of trees and orchards and green areas in towns and villages. So they utilize whatever they can actually use. Of course, they prey mostly on medium-sized mammals, and which they find, of course, in these agricultural areas. The biggest threat to long-eared owls are actually, it used to be illegal shooting. We stopped that definitely. Sometimes it is poisoning because people are using different rodenticides, and this could influence the species. But road casualties are as bad as for the barn owl, and we find a lot of them run over on different types of roads. They also suffer from lack of good breeding sites and lack of good nesting sites, nests, because they usually take nests of hooded crow, magpie, and different species. This is why we erected hundreds of different wicker baskets for them, and we also tried different nest box designs to see how they actually use them. And the thing is, they do take it. So they use either nest boxes, either wicker baskets. Nest boxes are much better because they can last much longer, up to 10, 12 years, while the wicker baskets could be usually used only 1, 2, or even up to 3 seasons, and then you have to make them again and buy them and erect them up in the tree, etc. So it's quite a lot of work. So if you ask me now, I would rather go for proper, good quality breeding boxes, nest boxes. Of course, people mostly know about long-eared owls, and they connect them with Serbia because of the long-eared owl wintering roost phenomena and our huge population in different villages and towns in winter. Kikinda, of course, is a place which we call the world owl capital, the place where we found up to 754 owls right in the center of a town in just one day. And you go there readily in late November until the late January, and you find over 250, 300, over 400 birds. Of course, it depends from season to season. And many other places around, especially in northern part of Serbia, they hold up over 100 birds in just a couple of trees. And this is due to good food supply around because of the agriculture area, and also due to nice areas where they can actually roost, usually close to some municipality building or schools or some public buildings where they find trees like spruce and different juniper and even deciduous trees like these birch. And our long-eared owl population, wintering population, is really well studied. We know now that our winter population in the country is over 50,000 individuals in winter, and we assume that some of the birds are coming from nearby countries or even from Northern Europe and Eastern Europe, but there is not enough clue, not enough data, because north of Serbia, not many people are actually catching long-eared owls and bringing them. So the chance for us to catch a ring bird in winter is really tiny, and so this is why we only have a couple of 2 or 3 records of foreign birds coming into the Serbia. So, but most of the population definitely is local, and they tend to go maybe somewhat like 20, 30 kilometers around the place where they were born, and they tend to stay around. The next species is quite, I would say, similar to the long-eared owl, but its ecology is quite different. And you can see actually that we estimated population size to 0 to 45 pairs of the short-eared owl. 0 because we definitely have years where we don't find any breeding pairs, and then you have, for example, the next year you have eruption of breeding pairs that came from somewhere, and they start breeding in typical open grasslands, agricultural habitats up in the north of the country. And the short-eared owl was species well known to people in Serbia, especially hunters and bird watchers and ornithologists, but we didn't know a lot about its ecology. And let's say 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 years, somebody would find a nest, and it was all. People would be finding them when they walk along these grasslands. But then when we started to research long-eared owls, we start finding short-eared owls in our villages and towns, and this was a bit shocking for us because you open up a book and it says short-eared owls are living up in open grasslands in areas with cattle are grazing, and there's plenty of areas without trees, etc., etc. And then you walk up in Kikinda and you find it sitting right beside the church on a really busy, close to the busy road where people are walking below, and there's plenty of noise, and it's sitting up there and pretending to be one of the long-eared owls. And then back in 2007 we start finding more and more, and I think we're witnessing now a shift in their ecology, and a part of population, of wintering population of short-eared owl in this part of the world, not only in Serbia, but also in Romania, in Hungary, in other countries, they're actually coming inside the villages and towns. I personally believe this is due to huge long-eared owl population and young, inexperienced short-eared owl flying during the night above this region. It has to see at least 1, 2, 3, or 50 long-eared owls flying around hunting, and really attractive for them. So they during the night they follow these similar species, and in the morning they end up right in the middle of the village. And when they're in the village, they find it warmer and even safer because there will be no one shooting at them. I mean, direct threats are even less in villages and towns than outside. And some of the birds are definitely now coming to the same sites. We've been following, for example, 3 sites where every winter we find short-eared owl sitting up in the same tree on the same branch. So I believe that's even the same individual. There are a couple of pictures of individuals taken by myself and my friend Katerina Pavlovic on different locations. And this is really interesting. This is where we find short-eared owls in Serbia in different villages and towns. The picture in the middle where you see this yellow building is right in the center of Kikinda, and one of them was sitting up in this Scots pine. And then on different pictures, you find them on an upper left picture, for example, that was just beside the local hospital in one of the villages. Then below, it's one of the yards in Ruma, for example, and on and on. So in one of the pictures, you see domestic chickens walking below, and there was a short-eared owl sitting in one of these juniper trees right in the middle of the village. So it was quite funny to find them all around these areas. And also our friends from Poland and Slovakia and US and other countries that were coming, and they were quite shocked to see this behavior, which was for them unknown by the time. The next species is a lovely tawny owl, which you guys don't have up in the United States. Again, quite large population, between 21,000 and 27,000 breeding pairs, stable, living in all different types of woodlands, from really low areas up to the high mountains. And this species has a huge ecological niche which they can utilize. You know, an old growth forest, really bad copies, and city park, and different alleys along the roads. And you know, they're looking for different cavities where they can find a place to breed, but sometimes they even go inside human buildings and below the roof, and you know, they find their ways. But what we found out during the last 12 or 13 years is that many breeding pairs are not so productive. For example, you see this picture, it's a young beech forest up in Ovča mountain close to Čačak, and it's been heavily managed by humans for ages, and there are no trees which are 100+ years old, which would eventually secure good enough areas for breeding. So this is why we had to take some measures, and the measures which we have taken are actually, of course, wooden nest boxes that we, so-called chimney type, that we produced and placed in many areas of Serbia. Kids love doing it. We have really cool workshops with kids where we bring wooden material, and we tell them about owls, about their ecology, and then we help them to assemble the nest box. Then we help them to paint and to put numbers and different letters on the nest box, and then we go together to erect the nest box. And you know, kids get really excited by these activities. Of course, it helps us a lot to monitor the population. And since 2007, when we intensively start doing this research and conservation work with tawny owl, we learned a lot. For example, we never knew that some of the individuals could live up to 15, 16 years, that the females live much longer than males, for example, the largest number of eggs, the biggest clutch was 8 eggs, etc., etc. Now we have individual animals that we track down and we catch and we measure every spring, just once in the springtime, and then we come back when their chicks are bigger, so we bring them. And now we know that most of the tawny owls are not dispersing quite far away from the area where they actually are born. And now we know that also, you know, chicks that are born in nest boxes are also looking for nest boxes. So when you start this kind of conservation program, you have to put more and more boxes, because some of them would be rotten and falling down, then you have to replace them. But also it's good that you put more nest boxes in a perimeter of a couple of kilometers around the site. And there you actually secure more good breeding sites for more owls. The next species is a really fierce Ural owl that people say that's the most aggressive owl in Europe. Its population is between 430 and 650 breeding pairs, and we believe to witness a small increase in their population. It's quite different than the tawny owl. They kind of look alike, but they're distinctive relatives. And the Ural owl needs old growth, deciduous, conifer, mixed woodland, but really old, good quality woodland. And our population is now that we know is living in the very southwest of the country, also in very northeast of the country, and in a tiny area of Vršac Hills. And one population is belonging to the Carpathian population, which is mostly living in Romania and further up in Slovakia and other countries in Eastern Europe, while population in southwestern Serbia is a different population that lives up in the mountains along so-called Dinaric mountains that stretch from the Alps down to Greece, more or less. And so we've been researching Ural owl since 2000, 2001. That was our friend and colleague Mile Vucanovic, and then we jumped in to help research back in 2007 and 8 and 9 and so on. This species is also needing some human help, and we have 4 sites now where different nest boxes have been erected. Mile is witnessing Ural owl taking nest boxes at Vršac Hills in Vojvodina region straight away, while this Dinaric population in southwestern Serbia, sometimes it takes up to 12 years for a single pair to take a nest box. So it takes a lot of time for them to change their minds and to go from natural cavities and broken trees inside the nest box. And so we don't have enough data to say whether our nest box program was actually successful or not. We need to work more, and it's really hard working with these species because they live up in really high remote areas. You have to visit them when they're copulating and calling, but it's usually really cold with heavy snow. It's really hard, for us to go and walk and find these areas. So it's quite tough. And this species is actually endangered by our tree cutting and illegal logging and many activities that actually humans are now taking in different mountains. This is me and a couple of other friends we brought some of the Boreal owl and Ural boxes up into Jadovnik mountain. And all of these pictures are from Mile Vucanovic, which is in Vojvodina region up in Vršac Hills. He has done some incredible job of Ural owl conservation there. You see in upper left picture, loads of Ural owl nest boxes that were placed up in the protected areas, Vršac Hills. Then right next to it is a clutch of 4 chicks of Ural owl. Then of course, on the far right side, one individual, that's a female, that could be quite aggressive towards human approaching nests. Then in the middle lower picture, you see, I would say, a natural crow or buzzard or raven nest up in the woodland. And this is really bad because a Ural owl will be taking an old abandoned nest, and so many times their eggs are falling down, the chicks are falling down. So this is why nest boxes are really, really needed. And the last species is the biggest, the most powerful eagle owl. That's a relative of your Bubovirginianus, of your eagle owl in the United States. Gray horned owl. Thank you. Yeah, this species was under huge pressure from humans in the past. It was shot. It was even illegally traded and caught and sold out of the country. For example, some of the individuals were illegally taken from ex-Yugoslavia and Serbia and brought into Germany when they started reintroduction program in many sites in Germany. we found out this ages after it actually happens. And eagle owl has a rather small population, bit increasing recently from 380 to somewhat over 500 breeding pairs. Their normal breeding habitat would be something like hilly, rocky slopes with lots of rocks and sometimes river banks with steep slopes and loess cliffs and sometimes even sparse woodland. But it's usually something where they can actually overlook a good hunting ground, which is like a riverine forest or agriculture area or something like a lake or nearby village where they can easily go down and hunt a chicken or a fox or a hare or a crow, a buzzard, or I mean, the diet is so diverse that when we do research of eagle owl diet, we find things which are like 15 grams of body mass of different prey up to like 3.5 or even 4 kilos. These guys are huge. They can go for cats and dogs, and people have been telling us that they saw an eagle owl catching a cat in their backyard and just swooping with it down somewhere. So they're quite interesting species. After decades of suffering from human persecution, things have settled down and they're now coming back to their former breeding grounds. So we do find them on many different sites, especially in the southern parts of the country. And they're now even reoccupying some areas in Vojvodina province, especially along the Danube. And sometimes people are shocked for seeing a huge thing just behind their house or someplace close to their home, and they call us and say, there's a huge owl up in the tree, and we usually think they didn't see it well, but sometimes it proves out that they actually saw an eagle owl. So this species, what we do for the species actually is a little bit of monitoring and bringing, but nothing much more could be done because no nest boxes programs or something will be taken into consideration because they wouldn't take it. What we are trying to do is trying to talk to people and say, especially to people who love outdoors, for example, free climbers and people that go up in the rocky slopes, we say, please don't go up there from the beginning of March until the late June or something. And then we write letters and we ask also officials to go and talk to them because this disturbance could be a really bad factor for these species. We don't want to lose some of the really good breeding sites. Also, the other trouble for the species definitely is electrocution, because as the country's been developing in many areas where you didn't have electricity and power lines, now we have new power lines coming to different restaurants and different facilities and villages and weekend homes, and of course birds, they tend to land and perch sometimes up in the pylons and they get electrocuted. So every year we get a couple of records of them electrocuted. Sometimes you find some of the eagle owls also poisoned. We don't know whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, but this should be further researched if we want to find out what was going on. But as I said, really iconic, interesting species. And yeah, I think I have to get up a little bit. I have a friend who has done a T-shirt with its hand painted eagle owl, and besides, of course, long-eared owl and many other owl species, eagle owl is one of my favorite species because they're so impressive. And this is the end. I just put a list of my friends who have contributed to this presentation with their pictures, and these guys are doing a really good job. I'm so proud of my country and my friends and our members and our society and all of you guys who contribute a lot to understanding nature. You guys contribute to educating people, to communicating nature through various media. And at the end of the day, I think nature is actually benefiting from us who love it. So this is all. Thank you a lot.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Those of you who have questions, if you could type them into the Q&A, that would be fantastic. We have a few there already.
I think I just have to show the T-shirt because I was that's the Eagle Owl, because they couldn't see it because of the share screen.
Oh yes, definitely.
You're getting a lot of woes from the audience downstairs.
Oh, you can hear them upstairs, huh, Joe?
Oh yeah.
Since you were just talking about eagle owls, one of the questions that came in is, do eagle owls eat fish?
Yeah, we have a couple of records of eagle owls taking fish, especially along the Danube. You come into the nesting site, you find these big chicks inside. You need to ring them, and there's like half of the carp, there's like half of the coot, and the whole duck, and 1/4 of a rat, and you go like, oh my god, so their diet is so diverse, they could eat up anything. We still didn't have a case of a child eaten by an eagle owl. Of course, yeah, that's a joke, but I wouldn't leave my kids over there, because eagle owls are really nasty things.
Joe, do you want to grab a question? We have one that says, is the eagle owl more like the golden eagle or the bald eagle? In Louisiana, great horned owls take over available bald eagle nests.
I think the eagle owl could be, maybe it could be taking a smaller juvenile eagle owl, but they're not, I don't think it's really smart to do that. But we find lots of buzzards. That's a kind of a medium-sized bird of prey, and ravens, and it's up to the size of raven. This is what you actually find, and mostly of cormorants, and sometimes even gray herons and mullards, and species like that. So usually up to a kilo, 1.2, but sometimes you do find a prey which is over 3 kilos in their nest.
All right, so this person said, although we have barn owls here in the United States, even in Louisiana, though not common, what other owls that are found in Serbia are also found in the United States? I understand they might be different subspecies, etc., but as a general rule, what owls are found in the lower 48 and in Serbia?
Well, you guys are having different race of long-eared owl. They look quite different. Of course, different subspecies, or maybe even brought up as a new species of barn owl living up in the States. The Boreal owl has its counterpart in the United States. The Pygmy owl as well. The short-eared owl also lives in the States and also in this part of Europe, this part of the world, in Serbia. Scops owl is quite different than your species. Ural owl is nothing like you find up in Northern America. Eagle owl, you have a counterpart of course, there, and I think that's about it. Well, the tawny owl could be maybe resembling barred owl, but not exactly. It's quite a different species. So this is about it, yeah.
All right. Andy has a question from our in-person audience. Someone wants to know if the different species mate for life.
That's a good question. I think that most of the animals, birds, well, I mean, they tend to mate for life, but this is not really smart strategy within if you're a wild animal. So the so-called extra pair effect has been found in many species. They bond, and you find male and female closely together, and then you do DNA testing of chicks, and it finds out that 1 out of 4 is a chick belonging to a different father, and you go like, what the hell? Is like, how did this happen? Because they're all the time together. But animals tend to have an extra pairing event in nature to secure that the different gene may be passed, and maybe that very gene would be actually helping this family to survive and bring another generation. And so what we think in nature is like 1 + 1 is not really 1 + 1. It's usually 1 + 1 is 3.
Okay, so you kind of mentioned the screech owl. Is there anything similar in Serbia to that? You mentioned the Scops owl, but do you have species that have two different color morphs, like our eastern screech owl comes in both red and gray?
The Screech Owl may be bit looking like a Scops Owl, but they're so different. Talking about different morphs, for example, you get Tony owls from dark red to deep gray, and then all sorts of intermediates. I've been reading different studies from Switzerland and other countries, and people prove that different scientists prove that there's an ecological adaptation to the climate. And for example, the red morph lives better inside the forest, and the gray morph outside of the forest, and some of them are better adapted to mosquitoes and different pests that actually are living together with these owls. So the morphs could be ecological answer to climate change also, and to pests and to many different things going on. For example, in Switzerland, they found out that the population of reddish birds has been increasing in percentage since last 50, 60 years, and also the climate is changing. So they're better adapted to warmer climate. And this could be happening to other species as well.
How do they track the population through the country, and what kind of effort does it take to see the population changes?
It's a huge effort. It needs hundreds of people, thousands of working days, sleeping just a little bit, breaking your cars, destroying your shoes, breaking your binoculars, etc., etc. Especially in a country where you cannot secure funds to do research constantly, where institutions are quite weak, and it's really, really hard. But what we have done here is we have huge passion for what we do, and we also inspire other people so they come and help. And everybody's a volunteer when we do something with owls. And we never got actually paid to do owl conservation and research. The other things that we do for a living, that's other things, but owls is like the main thing when we go for it, even unpaid.
I'm gonna do just one more and then we'll wrap it up. You're introducing children to owls, getting them excited about building nest boxes. You're talking with farmers about the effects of pesticides in owls. Do you have enough ambassadors to accomplish all you want to do with owls?
Oh gosh, yeah, we need help from other people as well. I think we've done hundreds of different presentations and talks to kids and different outdoor activities, and every time you find them interested. And once you start talking to farmers, you open up their views, and people then want you to come again. But it's only a handful of us, and we simply cannot be at one time and on 10 different locations. So we need more people. We need more volunteers, and people need conservation. People need nature. People need to believe that they actually can contribute to change. They can contribute to conservation. Once you open their views, once you invite them to do something, sometimes even really tiny small steps, then you win. Then you get them on your side. Not on your, but we get them on our side, because what we do here is also helping nature in the States, and opposite. We live on the same planet, so it's not you and me, it's us.
That is a fantastic thing to end on. I mean, because that's what it's all about. I mean, at the Owl Center here, we're about making the world a better place for owls, but we're very conscious that in talking about that, it's for more than just owls. Very often it's benefiting other wildlife, habitats in general, and people. We live on this planet too. So fantastic note to end on. So once again, this presentation will be saved on our YouTube channel, so you can have your friends come and watch it also later on the International Owl Center's YouTube channel. And if you want to support Milan's work, you can get one of our Owls of Serbia t-shirts. Joe, do you want to hold that up again? You can buy those in our online gift shop, internationalowlcenter.org. Go into the gift shop, and if you have problems, give us a call and we'll help you. And Milan is going to be printing some of these in Serbia. So anybody in Serbia, or can you ship to other countries in Europe also, Milan?
We'll do our best. It's really hard to promise because we are outside of EU. Shipping is a bit, tricky. But if there is anyone who wants it, we'll find out. Yeah.
Okay. And we can ship to other countries also. We just have to do manual, behind the scenes email, calculate things, but we can do that also. It's just a whole lot more expensive for us to ship to Europe than it probably is for Milan to ship elsewhere in Europe. So half of all the profits from our t-shirt sales will go to support Milan and his work with owls over there. So again, thank you, Milan, for doing this for us and for teaching us more about owls over in Serbia. Everybody have a fantastic day. We're going to be doing another presentation in person at the Owl Center at 1 o'clock Central Time, so in 1 hour, and then give it another couple hours, 3 hours Central Time, and we'll have our next online presentation, which will be from Australia, which is 6 a.m. Monday morning their time, and very late Milan's time. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you again. Thanks for joining us.